We might be live. Let's see if this worked.
Yep, it says it's streaming live on custom live stream.
Are we live already? We are live. Hello, everybody who is tuning in. My name is Joe Russo. I am the CEO of the Palm Beach Tech Association, here to bring you another fantastic tech talk by one of our longtime supporters, Shawn Genoway. I'm going to introduce him here in a second, but for those who have not seen or been a part of any of our in-person tech talks before, every Monday we host a 15-minute TED-style talk on a technology topic presented by one of our great South Florida technology community members, and it could be of all shapes and sizes, all ranges of technology. We're pretty inclusive of that. And of course, if you want to learn more about our events or anything about our organization, go to palmbeachtech.org. And on our About page, we also have a community creed that also cites that we are a inclusive community for all. So please do note on our website, you can find more about organization and what we do. So with that, I wanted to introduce our topic for today, and that is how to implement BYOD, or bring your own device. And to present that, we have Shawn Genoway. He is the Vice President from DedicatedIT, one of the premier members of the Palm Beach Tech Association, located in Lake Park, Florida. So right around Jupiter in the Palm Beach Gardens area. It's a small little town. And they have, I believe, about 50 employees now, and have had quite the adventure over the last few months with a lot of their clients to implement a lot of different strategies to keep their companies moving forward. So thank you so much, Shawn, for joining us today. Excited to learn more about what you do and, of course, the topic at hand.
Yep, absolutely. My pleasure. Yeah, and probably since the last time you paid a visit, we've actually grown to a little over 65 employees now. So we continue to grow in these rather interesting times. If it's okay, I'm going to share my screen. So, talking about interesting times, one of the things that I wanted to do was talk about bring your own device, but it's a little bit different. I think it's almost more, it's your own device now versus bring your own. I think a lot of companies with what's been happening with COVID-19 and the pandemic have been forced to really say, hey, my employee base, you're now working from home. And so it's not about bring your own device. It's around, hey, you need to use your own device. I think coming out of the pandemic, and when we get a clearer sense of what's happening, I think until that happens, employers will probably need to think about, hey, what am I going to do from a policy perspective for folks that we now have working at home? And, do I offer up a stipend? So, BYOD in and of itself, it's probably a bit of an older discussion. It's been around, probably 10 years now. But I think that this actually makes it a little bit more, if you are an IT leader coming out of this, you need to think, well, hey, what do we do if this is the new world? This is the new way of being. So when you think of BYOD, normally it's taken on a couple of different forms. One is that more informal, where if you have anybody who's working from home today, or certainly in the past, really there was probably an informal program in place where they could come in, they were accessing your app and data, and they're doing it from their personal device. And when you look at the more formal side, it's, hey, there's a policy in place, there's stipend, it's a self-service website, and then there's support in play as well. Again, I think that if you haven't had a BYO program, you'll probably come to a point where you need to start thinking about, hey, what do we do now longer term? If I look back to March, a lot of us were working and reacting on how can we stand up services quickly and continue to run our business. So it certainly presented a challenge. When you look at a typical BYO program, there's so much that comes into play, right? You're looking at whether people working on the personal device, privacy, it's wireless, how you're supporting them at home, how do you support when they travel. And I've probably over the last 10 years, I've talked to maybe 400 or 500 different companies who have implemented programs or talked about implementing. And it's fallen down into these bullet points. All right. It's about letting the employee choose their laptop and their operating system. You really want to offer the same experience as you do on a managed device. So if you give a corporate or company device today, how do you continue to offer that out? One of the key things is, because you're now going to be supporting potentially personal devices, and people can go and buy whatever they want, you're not defining that standard anymore. You need to be thinking about, well, how do I reduce that dependency on IT? Right? You can't have a how-to for every different device that you're going to run into. One of the things that I've seen companies be very successful at is just a simple self-service site where they can offer up BYOD, FAQs, and so on. One of the important things, and even today I still watch companies who are trying to manage the service or trying to manage their hardware, like what is coming into my environment. And BYOD, if done right, is probably more about controlling the service versus trying to control the hardware. And most importantly, it has to be simple to participate. If I look at what makes a program great, it's probably starting with 5 steps, right? 1, survey your employees, look at your stipend, understand what policies apply. Do you have any program rules? And then what is the security posture that you're going to take? Now, the survey your employees, again, that's an interesting one, because now we have the vast majority of our employees are working from home. So we didn't have that chance to survey. It's BYO is really thrust upon them. So how do we work through that? Now, if you do go back and survey your employees, one of the things that we certainly found was that employees like what's outside of what IT offers, right? We tend to be pretty staid around, hey, here's what we're driving towards. We're interrogating the device. We're doing a significant amount of management. There was also a lot of folks who said, hey, I'm willing to take on the added responsibility. And by that, it was interesting, when I talk to companies and when I look at what I've done at other companies, one of the first things that we did was we said, oh, hey, we're going to have a massive loaner pool because people are going to do wild and wacky stuff with their devices. And, what is it that they're going to do? And we were pretty concerned about that. We talked about doing loaner pools, and just standing up so many different programs. One of the things we found out sooner than later was that people didn't have an issue with that added responsibility, because it's sort of like if you've ever done work around your house on the weekend and you go out and you rent a car, or let's say you rent a truck, you do things with that car or truck that you would never do with your own vehicle. You just don't. So what we found is that people had no issue taking on that additional responsibility, because they really take care of their devices. In the companies that I've talked to and that I've worked with, nobody, very seldom out of thousands of devices that were coming back before that would be potentially stolen or damaged or what have you, out of 1,000, 10,000 devices, I probably saw 2 that came back, versus what I would normally see. So people take a lot better care of their device. Probably more importantly, because they have their banking, they have their wedding photos, they have baby photos, like all of those things that are them. There's that mix of work and personal. Now, one of the things that always surprised me was that people believe that they'd be more productive and even happier working on their own device. And in survey after survey, this is actually shown to be true. People, instead of trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, people being on the device that they chose, that they selected, it made them simply quite happier. So that was great to see. When you start looking at your, identifying your current costs and then looking at the stipend, really and how you land on the stipend, what you want to do is identify your existing costs. And your existing costs really today are probably made up of, hey, how do you procure, you image, you have to secure, you deploy it, you then monitor, you maintain, you're probably backing up. And then at some point, if you're on a depreciation cycle of, let's say, 3 years, then you retire that device. So what you want to define is really what is your cost savings target. Now, if you look at that 3-year cost in your own organization, potentially you're looking at maybe it's between $1,500 to $200,000 to manage your device. What you want to be able to do is offer a stipend that really motivates employees. Now, as well, you probably want to show some return on investment as well, where you're saying, hey, I'm going to go out and offer a stipend that will get the employee excited and will have them participate in the program. When you're looking at the devices that you offer today out to your user community, typically what I have seen is that there's almost 3 tiers. One is you have your top tier that's potentially going out to the executive. You have that middle tier that typically gets out to everybody from a laptop perspective. And then you have a lower end tier, and maybe it's used for training or some travel or what have you. What I found to be successful is really you want to choose that middle tier laptop, the one that's in the average cost. Now, you may have a brand name in place today. What you may want to do is simply say, hey, for that cost of, let's say you land on, I don't know, $1,200 is going to be your stipend. So what you want to look and say, for $1,200, can one of my employees go out and get a comparable device? Doesn't have to be a brand name, but can they get a comparable device that's going to have, the RAM, the storage, all the things that they need to do their job? Now, one of the things that you also want to do with the stipend is make sure that you align it to your depreciation cycle to the duration of the program. So, for example, if you have a 3-year depreciation cycle, then you want to offer $1,200 over 3 years. And the thinking is this. So when I first rolled the program out, I really, quite frankly, I screwed up in the sense that I didn't look at where people were at in their current hardware. So I rolled out the program and said, hey, the program is here. At the time, it was, when I had done it, it was a $2,100 stipend. I had 2 people who signed up, or 200 people who signed up immediately. So I'm close to $500,000 just in hardware at that point. If you think about, if I had taken a step back and said, hey, it's important that I align to the cycle, I probably would have said, hey, John Smith, you're 3 years in, your device is close to being depreciated. Now I'm going to let you join the program. It makes sense, right? Or if I had Jane Smith who joined the program, perhaps she was only a month in with a brand new device, then you could say, hey, Jane, find somebody else for that device to go to who still want to have a managed device, and then you can join the program. If not, you wait till the depreciation. So it's really important to align to the duration of the program. One of the other lessons that I learned when rolling out at the 2100 as an example was I did a lousy job on change management or org readiness. So here was a program that was fundamentally shifting the organization in the sense of we were going from corporate devices, all managed standard, to now, hey, you can bring your own device. I could have spent a lot more time working with managers and their teams to say, hey, this is coming, this is what the program means, and then they'll start to budget. They would have been looking at, hey, what is this going to cost me? And maybe they would come back and say, hey, I don't want anybody to participate until the next budget year. So anyway, just some considerations. One of the other things that you want to do is also align the duration of the program. So good. Again, another lesson was I had people, and I got the same response back from other companies who were running similar programs, that they would have a participant who would be in the program for, let's say, 2 years and 6 months. They had their stipend. When they were leaving the company, HR would pipe up and say, hey, you still owe us $50 because you were in the program and you didn't go all the way to the end. It just feels cheesy. Like when you look at the amount, what the overall spend, it feels pretty lousy going back after an employee and chasing them for $50. So one of the things that had gotten into a standard practice, and again, heard back from companies that it resonated well, was there was a proration policy. So if somebody leaves within a year, then you wouldn't, if somebody left within a year, then the stipend was prorated, the payback. But if it was after a year, they were good and clear. Now, the one interesting question that came up a couple times, what if they're with the company and they leave after, or they're in the program, they leave the company, they're gone for less than 6 months and they come back. Well, guess what? They're still participating in the program. We have put a rule in though, that if it was longer than 6 months, then they could come back and apply in the program. So that was a little bit of around the stipend. So the other piece that came up, and this was universally worldwide, the same question was around HR and legal. One of the big items from an HR perspective was, hey, do our existing policies apply? And when you think about it, we already had people who were working from home. Other companies do the same. They just hadn't formalized a policy. And one of the things that came back from an HR perspective is that, yes, all the existing policies actually apply to BYO participants. So your policies, your code of conduct, nothing really changes. The question that came back from legal more had to do with, hey, if we need to do a discovery. So if if we're in litigation and we need to do discovery, what do we do at that point? And it's like, hey, do we have access to email if we needed to do litigation and discovery? And the answer is yes, more often than not, you have access to email. So they were actually satisfied with that. From a finance perspective, because you're looking at overall worldwide, if you roll it out worldwide, your challenge is, hey, I have the stipend. Do you pay it out as a bonus or do you pay it as hardware? Well, we found that there's more success in paying it out as a bonus. And then that way you don't get into, from a taxation perspective, you're not getting into one, taxation issues, but you're also not getting into where effectively, if you pay it as hardware, then you're saying, hey, we own that piece of hardware. The company owns that. Well, do you really want to manage all that disparate hardware? And the answer is I'm pretty sure no. So you really want to get out of that business by paying it out as a bonus. Do you care if somebody goes and buys a new device? The answer is no, you don't care. They'll go out, they can spend that money however they want, as long as they're using a working device for their work, and they're following your policies. So those were sort of the key lessons on that. Now, the one thing I would say, and going back to the stipend real quick, that I think that again it was a significant mistake, was when I rolled the program out globally. I did a standard stipend across the board, and for me it was more about, hey, it was so easy to do because less to manage. The challenge with that though is that if you get into EMEA, as many of you probably know, the income tax rates are just so high that they were probably that 1,200 as an example was only probably working out to 500 to 600 after taxes. It was that bad. So I would probably go back and revise my position to say that if you are doing a stipend and you're doing globally for EMEA, look at probably adding another $300 to $400 to your stipend just to cover taxes. It's almost a fair thing to do. So when you look at the rules are pretty, again, you want to keep it pretty simple. All right, develop your rules, present the concept. Manager's approval is certainly important. Again, I threw out a $1,200 stipend. You're looking at a laptop and then 3 years of maintenance for that period. Also, if you leave the company, you want to put in there about prorating the stipend. If there's any company-owned devices, you want them to be returned, and they can go into a loaner program. One important piece is that your BYOD hardware has to be addressed by the vendor. Again, just way too much if you look at all the different devices that are out there. And again, this is about managing the service and not the device. From a virtual app and desktop perspective, so I like that approach personally, because I found whether it was BYO, whether it was in the middle of a pandemic, one of our first that we experienced in our lifetime, when you look, it's very easy to stand up and have somebody work within the confines of something where you define that standard, right? All your how-tos, all your instructions, everything in something that you're still providing, even if they're working on their own device. And then the final point here was, all existing company policies apply. The one thing that I would say is, it's important to put together a simple self-service website, right? Something that everybody can go, they can see the policy, your FAQs, enrollment, and also all your how-to docs, right? Your goal is, when you do BYO, is really to make people self-sufficient, right? So it's really around offering self-service. If they turn around and you're seeing more tickets or more cases come into the desk, then there's probably an issue in how it's rolled out, or that your teams are actually supporting them at home on their supporting their local devices. From an enrollment perspective, again, feedback from other companies, and this came up, is that you do want to have a policy in place. And it can be as simple as a one-pager with the 10 points that were there previous. You do want them to have a check agreement box. So the cancellations that I did hear about were people who said, hey, I'm going to participate in the program. They then called the desk and say, hey, my hard drive just went, I want support. And I was like, well, no, that's not the spirit of the program. So you want to have an agreement box, and then, people submit. If you look at what we're doing, I'm just keeping an eye on time here. If you look at what we're doing, we're really providing access across, from a security perspective, we're enabling our users to work from anywhere and from any device across multiple apps, and being able to deliver those, access the data. And then we're probably leveraging clouds as well, from a SaaS, web, and mobile perspective. If you look from a virtual app and desktop, and this is purely just from this view, you're going to be thinking about, hey, two-factor authentication, your firewalls, intrusion detection, data loss, web filtering, threat management, and then your final piece is looking at your app and desktop virtualization, and then however you want to approach from a user data perspective, how they get access, single sign-on and perhaps AD. So those were some of the key lessons that I think as we come out of the pandemic and we think about more people working remote, that I think that are just some considerations for people to have. With that, I will look for Joseph to see if we've had any questions come in.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Shawn, for going over this. If you are watching, you can dump a question into the chat there real quick. But I'll start, with a question of my own. I mean, of the amount of clients that you've been working with at Dedicated IT, have there been a number of companies looking at implementing this in just the last few months that have just said, wow, we should start looking at this more? Or has it been more of just kind of a steady stream?
What's interesting, and not only at Dedicated, but if I look at some other companies that I've talked to, many of their customers didn't realize that they were already working in this environment, so that they were already working on SaaS-based apps. There was nothing on-prem. They were already working, from a 365 perspective. They were already working as somebody would if they were working remote. They probably just didn't realize it. But then, that transition going from office to home was easy. We certainly saw a significant increase, from a case perspective, but it settled down really fast, and people just had flexibility. Great question.
And with that as well, is there an example of maybe like a large Fortune 500 or enterprise company that does BYOD at scale? I know there's a lot of talk right now about companies doing remote work, and with remote work that comes a lot of IT questions. Curious what insights you might have, and I know you worked for a while at Citrix, which is a pretty large, well-known company, and curious what your insight might be there as far as the larger guys are concerned.
Yeah, so if I look at our internal percentage and looking at Citrix, so we had just a little under 50% of our employee base were BYO, and if you look at any endpoint management solution, so whether Citrix endpoint management, Microsoft endpoint management or manager, it was pretty seamless. Again, it's a device without realizing it. Again, more often than not, we already have people who are working from home. We already have people who are accessing the environment remotely, and we just haven't formalized it, or a lot of companies haven't formalized it. And again, people that I've talked to, it was that same reoccurring theme again. The interesting thing about the technologies that are there today is that you can shut it all down and pretty much go back to a dumb terminal and turn someone's device into pretty much a dumb terminal where they're not accessing anything locally. They can't copy, paste, or what have you. They just work within that environment. And I think that that's where it starts to get powerful. If you look at business continuity, DR, certainly, we know what that's like here in South Florida.
With that, we don't have any questions on this one today. For first time in a while, I don't know if that's you being extremely thorough or not. I found the presentation very, very direct, but with that, thank you very much, Shawn, for spending some time with us today and giving the presentation. This is, of course, going to be stored on our Facebook page and on YouTube for anybody who wants to come back and watch this again later. So I appreciate that. And of course, all the guitars in your wall back there. I didn't realize you were such a musician, but that's pretty interesting fun fact I just picked up by watching your conversation today.
Yeah, it's and one of the things, quite honestly, I'm a lousy musician, but one of the things I do, I love music and learning. I actually give away instruments. So I look for folks, young or old, who have a need for an instrument and maybe they can't afford it. And then I will find instruments a home for them. And my only stipulation is that if it ends up in a closet, like often can happen, that they either pass it on to somebody, but they can't sell it, or they give it back to me, and then I'll find another home for it. So I'm doing a shameless plug here right now that I got trumpets, accordions, I got a slew of stuff, and I'm always looking to put some music into the world, and certainly even more so now, given the times we're in.
That's an awesome little story. So bring your own device or donate your own instrument. So
yeah, exactly.
Well, Shawn, thank you so much for hopping on today and talking to us for a bit. Enjoy the rest of your week, and give my best to everybody over there at Dedicated IT.
I absolutely will. Thank you so much, and be safe, sir.
Will do. Thanks.
Okay. Bye.